will not raise taxes on working people.
We will not be raising taxes on working people.
Labour spent their victorious election campaign promising not to raise taxes on working people. But in Wednesday's budget, they did put taxes up, after weeks of reports about a giant black hole in the finances that the Chancellor would just have to fill, except it didn't exist. So did Rachel Reeves mislead taxpayers and the markets? We now know that on October 31st, the Office for Budget Responsibility under Richard Hughes told the Chancellor there was, in effect, no black hole. The OBR said because of higher than expected tax receipts flowing in, there was in fact a £4.2 billion surplus. And yet, on November 4th, Rachel Reeves gave an emergency speech interrupting breakfast news programmes in which she made no mention of the information from the OBR on the budget surplus. Instead, her speech prepared the public for tax rises in the context of bad news from the OBR on productivity.
And it has consequences for the public finances too, in lower tax receipts.
Then, on November 26th, Rachel Reeves delivered her budget. And this is the first the public knew that there was no financial black hole, but taxes would still be going up. So would spending on increasing the government's headroom, their financial buffer, and spending on benefits.
I can announce today, fully costed and fully funded, the removal of the two-child limit in full from April.
So, knowing all this, consider again the impression given on November the 4th when the Chancellor cited the OBR and made the case for raising taxes. Was that misleading?
It is my job to deal with the world as we find it, not the world that I might wish it to be.
The Conservatives, along with Reform and the SNP, are calling for a formal investigation, while government insiders appear to have gone on the attack. The Sunday Times reports a senior government source, they say, dismissed the situation as a silly row brought about by people who can't do maths. Would that be yourself and the Conservatives?
No, I don't think so. And I think that's a rather strange thing for someone in the government, rather desperate thing for someone in the government, the Treasury, to be saying.
I'm being honest with people.
In the end, the Chancellor's pre-budget speech, intended to put her on the front foot over tax rises, may well have had the opposite effect. Well, this morning I spoke to Rachel Reeves and started by addressing that pre-budget speech. I asked if she wanted to apologise to anyone who felt misled.
In that speech, I spoke about the Office of Budget Responsibility's review of productivity in the economy and that there was likely to be a substantial downgrade. That downgrade came and it took £16 billion off of tax receipts. And as a result, we did have to make decisions at the budget to increase taxes. And I was also clear in that speech about the things I wanted to achieve in my budget. To cut the cost of living, which is why we took £150 off of energy bills, cutting NHS waiting lists, which is why we protected NHS funding in the budget, and also cutting the debt and borrowing. And anyone who thinks that there was no repair job to be done on the public finances, I just don't accept that. We needed to build more resilience, more headroom into our economy. That's what I did, along with that investment in the NHS and cutting bills for families.
So I've got here the OBR document that they published in the past few days. I'm sure you've seen it, and it shows that on the 31st of October, 5 days before you gave that speech, that they told you that there was no black hole. There was, in fact, a £4.2 billion surplus. So when you gave that emergency breakfast speech, you already knew, didn't you, there was no black hole. You knew there was a surplus, but that's not the impression you gave. Was that misleading?
If I had come on this programme today and said, at the end of my budget, there's a £4.2 billion surplus, you would have said, and rightly so. That's just not enough, is it, Chancellor? And you would have been right, because we did need to build more resilience into our fiscal position. A 4.2 billion headroom would have been the lowest headroom against the fiscal rules that any Chancellor had ever delivered. So it is clear with those numbers, and those numbers moved around a lot, that we did need to build that headroom. And also, of course, the OBR was saying that inflation was likely to come in higher, and as a result it was so important that we had that cost of living offer in the budget. And of course the OBR confirmed that because of the measures we took in the budget, inflation was going to be 0.4 percentage points lower than it otherwise would have been.
The story you told was only premised on the gloomy news you were getting from the OBR, not the much rosier news about the increased tax receipts that were flowing in. And you pitched this as being honest with people. But that's far from being honest, isn't it? Can you at least understand why taxpayers, whose money this is after all, feel misled by you? Can you compute that?
Well, the rosy news that you refer to is higher inflation. And higher inflation is not good for working people. It may inflate the tax revenues, but only because prices are higher. And that's why I was determined to bring down inflation in my budget, which is why we had the cost of living offer on energy bills, on prescription charges, and also on rail fares. And in that speech, at the beginning of November, I also set out that everyone would need to contribute to put our public
Increased
finances with higher taxes. And I did extend the thresholds for 3 years from 2028 because to ensure that we had reductions in the cost of living, to ensure that we continue to bring down NHS waiting lists and build that resilience into our public finances that we absolutely need in the face of shocks, whether that is trade or conflicts around the world. And that's what we achieved, that's what I achieved in my budget.
If you're so sure you're right about this and that you did not mislead taxpayers and the markets, would you welcome an independent investigation that looked into this and could draw a line under it?
Well, the Office of Budget Responsibility have published their numbers. I've now delivered the budget. That budget is consistent with the speech that I made at the beginning of November to cut the cost of living, to cut NHS waiting lists and to cut the debt and the deficit.
So,
I said in that speech that everyone would need to contribute, but I kept that contribution as low as possible.
That was a very clear question, though. Just for the record, would you welcome an investigation that could draw a line under this, whether you misled the markets and taxpayers or not?
I don't think that is necessary. No. The Office of Budget Responsibility have published their numbers.
And finally, just you presented this budget as one of fairness. I mean, for those people who are wondering, why should benefits go up with inflation, but not the tax thresholds for working people? They say, well, maybe you think that's the right thing to do, but is it really the fair thing to do?
Well, the Conservatives froze the tax thresholds for 7 years. We have extended them for a further 3. But even under the Conservatives, benefits kept pace with inflation, and that's what we continued in the budget this week.
Is it fair, though?
I believe that is the right thing to do. We've uprated...
Just one last time. It's a straight question. Is it fair? Because the sense of fairness is what people feel very, very keenly. And they see benefits going up with inflation, and their tax thresholds are not.
I think it is fair that the pension goes up by the triple lock, and that's earnings. And I think it is fair that universal credit and other benefits go up by inflation. That's what's happened over a number of years, and that's what I continued in my budget.
Chancellor, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.